Welcome back to the show, my fellow extraordinary Americans. For today's guest, we have Haseena-Jackson. Haseena is an author, trainer, speaker, and certified coach. She has spent 30 years in the positions of leadership and management, where she developed the skill of helping others make the invisible visible and turn their dreams into real-world possibilities. Through her business, Faith, Hope, and Spirit LLC, Haseena offers training, coaching, and speaking in the areas of growth, development, communication, and leadership. She's also the founder and executive director of Ava's Pathways, which is a nonprofit organization for women supporting women through the traumas and adversities of life. She's also the author of three books, namely Created to Soar, Messages from the Spirit, and Reflections from Within. She has a saying that we should not allow anyone or anything to place ourselves in a corner, to be forgotten, and causing us to believe that we are insignificant. She's an extraordinary American, and I'm glad to have her on the show. Uh, Haseena, are you there?
Yes, I am. Thank you so much for having me today. Thank
Haseena,
you.
thank you so much for taking the time to do this podcast with me. I really appreciate you being on the show.
I
Uh,
appreciate you extending the invitation. It's an
yes.
honor. Thank you.
So, Haseena, can you tell me, the audience, a little bit more about yourself and your background and how you got started?
Oh, my background. I always have this one story that I share because this really was the pivotal point of my life because I was the baby. And so I was taught to have the follow me syndrome, follow my brothers, follow my sister to high school. And then after that, just get a trade and move on and become a housewife or whatever. And that was the plan. However, I had a gym teacher who was no more than about 4 feet 11. And she used to see me going home from school every day with a little folded up sheet of paper in my hand. And she says, "What are you doing with your life?" And I said, "What do you mean? What am I doing with my life?" I said, "I'm going to school, minding my business. I'm going to graduate and get my degree and get a job." And she says, "No, you're more than that." And I looked at her and I didn't really understand. And so the next thing she said, "Well, you're going to meet me in the principal's office tomorrow. And tomorrow changed my life forever." It opened my eyes to see that I didn't have to settle for just getting my diploma. Actually, I went on to receive my bachelor's degree and receive my first master's in business administration, all because she showed me that there was more in life than what I could just really see in front of my face.
Wow, like, can you tell me a little bit more about how what happened that day, like from there on, how the trajectory happened where you became where you went into coaching and training and all of that?
So then from there, I always had a spirit of wanting to inspire and lead. And so I graduated, got my master's, worked a little while in corporate America, and I always coach and mentor the people on my team. And God just said to me, "There's more for you that I have than just to work this job. And I want you to get out there and help other people find the more in them, to understand that there's more that they can do. They have gifts that they are to use to live in purpose, and you can help them by becoming their thinking partner and helping to raise their awareness to see things that are just beyond their natural sight." And that's how I started on my journey.
You know, Hasina, one thing I find interesting is that you took like a path which very like relatively few people take, because most people want to settle for, like, like what society tells them to do, like go for like a career in corporate America, or like just do the thing of like going to school and then getting a job and then like settling down and all of that stuff. But your path took you to a different way. Like, what was like other than like helping others, right? What was the motivational factor that drove you to take the path that is relatively less taken?
Well, I did work for a little while. I mean, I did work for a time in jobs, but I was always restless. I was always feeling that there was something else more for me to do. And then I had some challenges that occurred in my life, which is reason why I am where I am today too. And then I got more in tune with my father. I call him my dad, God. And I just kept talking to him and saying, what am I going to do with myself? What am I going to do with myself? And he says, well, I have a plan for you, but you need to be obedient and follow me. And that's hard to do because I left behind a 6-figure job. I was making good money. Don't think I wasn't. However, there's more than life than making money. To me, success means being able to see that smile on someone else's face because I helped them to become aware of something that they never even thought could be possible. Or being able to have a conversation with someone who felt like they were stuck in going down a path that they didn't have to go. Instead, there was another option for them. So I find the fulfillment in being able to talk with others and help others to see the strengths and the power that's within them and let them realize that they have a purpose and that they can follow that purpose. And I'm not saying that you quit your job. What I'm saying is you use your job to fund your purpose. So don't get stuck thinking that that is all you need to do for the rest of your life. Develop a plan of action and follow through with it so that you can go on to greater and higher levels in your life.
So Haseena, like in order to find your purpose, right? Because I completely agree with that. A lot of people they go through life without knowing their true purpose, right? And what they're passionate about. So if you had to advise like the audience on how to go about finding their purpose and knowing what their true calling is, how would they go about doing that?
There's a lot of different things, but first and foremost for me is spending time to reflect and taking time to meditate and just being silent and listening. I recently, maybe about a year, 2 years ago, I had the opportunity to actually go and speak at a women's prison, Logan Correctional Facility. And at that time, I was still really not really sure. I knew I wanted to be a coach. I still didn't have the really big picture of where I was going to go with being a coach. And I met a woman after I gave my speech who had been in prison for 35 years.
Wow.
And she was looking to get out of prison. And I thought to myself, you've been here for 35 years. How can I help people like you not return back? Because the reentry rate is about 30 to 40% for people to return back to incarceration. And so at that time, I was still trying to figure out where I was going to go in terms of my business, because I was speaking and training and doing those things. And God said, well, I want you to go back to school. So I went back to school, and now I'm in school for my second master's in human services counseling. And then I was saying, and my husband said, well, what are you going to do with that degree? And I said, I don't know yet. So then one day I was walking, because that's what I do. I spend time walking and praying, and I meditate. And I said, God, well, what am I going to do with this degree? And he said to me, remember that woman you met in prison? And remember how you said, what am I going to do with this degree? You're going to take this degree and open up a foundation that will help women move forward in their lives, to go through and above their life challenges, to help them with transformation thinking and being their thinking partner so that they can think outside the box. Because a lot of times we fall into the trap of being told what we have to do, and we've been placed in the box. And I've been placed in the box before. So all the things that I'm doing and what I'm helping people do, I've walked that path myself. I was a victim of domestic violence back at some point in my life. And I thought to myself, well, man, God said he hates divorce. I should stay in this relationship. But then God says, no, but what I brought together, let no man pull apart. He didn't bring us together. That was something that I did. So we have to spend that time taking time to reflect, asking God what it is that we want to do, looking at what our talents, what our gifts are, and seeing how we can put them to use in the world. And then seeing what is the impact that we want to make. Because everything is about, it has to be beyond you. It can't just be about myself. It has to be how I can help someone else. So those three things are vital to me. What is my gift? Listening to God, and what is the impact? And then taking that and putting that together and seeing how I can create something that goes just beyond myself.
I mean that is true. Like a lot of times like we have to take a look into like what impact we can make. And I'm sure that a lot of people want to make impact, but they go through this thing like where they feel like they're so pressured by circumstances, like which is outside their control, like whether they have like family, kids, or like they have like friends and family that they want to do something, but they feel like it's kind of like the crab bucket theory, right? Where like a lot of people they have these dreams that they want to make it a reality, but the environment around them is not is usually against that. So what would you advise somebody that would want to make an impact or has all these dreams that they want to make a reality, but their environment is like not supportive of that?
Well, then I asked them about their environment. Is that environment really for you? Because if your environment is holding you back, because that's one of the things that I'm doing with Ava's Pathway is creating community. So you have to look at who you're allowing to be part of your circle. You know, your circle is to lift you up, to help you be accountable and have commitment to do the things that you want to do. Join forces with people who are like-minded. Don't join forces with people who are naysayers. I mean, yes, and you have your commitment with your family, but there's some people out there that you can get into their circle, because we limit ourselves by focusing on the circle that we have that we maybe got from when we were a child. The same people that I grew up with in grammar school, I think I have one person that's in my circle today. I've expanded that circle to continue to sharpen myself by placing me in communities and networks that allow me to become better. So you hold yourself back because you place a lid on your potential and your growth by being surrounded in an environment that keeps you down. Instead, you have to get into an environment that lifts you up, who sharpen you, who encourage you, and who will promote you to go forward to do what you want to do. I mean, my husband is my biggest cheerleader, and I thank him so much. He says to me every day, what do you want to do? And that's what you do. He doesn't hold me back and say, oh, we can't do that. We don't have the money. I mean, it's not like money. We have a tree in the backyard. But I will say, I'm a firm believer that if you put your mind to it, the resources will come and the people will come. I have found that out myself with my own foundation. I was scrambling, trying to find board of directors. Perfect example. I had me and my co-founder, Alice, and I was trying to find additional board members, and I was hacking my brain. And all of a sudden, I found this one woman. I found another woman. I found two more people. I mean, they just fell into the mix. And now I have about 11 people on my board, and I am so excited because you have to just believe in that vision and continue going forward, and don't allow the setbacks to hold you back. Instead, use those setbacks to move you forward.
No, that's like I agree with the last part. Like there's a lot of times like people look at setbacks, but they look at it in a certain way. But if you put a positive spin on it and you use it as fuel to move forward, that changes everything. Like ultimately, even in Extraordinary America, like what you realize in like business and entrepreneurship is that it's all about mindset, right? Like the environment is usually out of our control, but it's how we look at things and the narrative we put in our head and how we go about dealing with failures and setbacks that usually makes a difference.
Makes a big difference, because if I look, I mean, I've had some setbacks along the way, and I could have chose to just sit in a corner, cry and moan about it. Instead, I just says, well, I have to keep going. I cannot allow this one hiccup, because actually the setback is really there to help you move forward. You know, people say they bounce back, but you really bounce forward because you move past that setback to the next step. And then you take the next step and take the next step. And then you just keep thinking about putting that one foot in front of the other. Like I run at least 3 or 4 days a week. And if I was to look at the end of the line, I probably would give up. Instead, I look at, I'm putting one foot in front of the other. And then I reach the end of my run. And I feel I feel the success and fulfillment of reaching that run. And that's the same thing with any task. You just keep putting one step in front of the other, and it will come to pass.
It's very interesting you say that, right? Because a lot of people they look at a daunting task and they're like, "Oh, how can I do this?" It's like a really huge task. But what you're suggesting with the analogy of the running is like you divide that daunting goal into little steps and like
Mhm.
one step at a time, and then that's what makes it easier. And then you focus on that one step, and then when that completes, you go. It's like an incremental kind of thing. So it's
Correct.
interesting that you say that, you know?
It's so true. I mean, it's with anything. You think about going to the store, there's a process. You have to get up out the chair. You have to put your shoes on. You have to get your coat. You have to grab your keys. For a woman, you got to grab your purse. For a guy, you might grab your wallet. Look at all those different steps you had to take to get to the store, right? It's
Yeah.
the same thing with opening your own business. The first thing you have to do is think about what is it that the service I'm going to provide? What is the problem I'm going to solve? What is the impact I want to make? Who do I need to have involved in this with me? Invite those people to the table. Then collaborate because it can't just be about you. If it's just about you, then what's the point of having the goal or what's the point of having the business? It's really about the impact and who you will be involving in your community.
Yeah, when you're presenting it like that, it makes sense because a lot of people whenever they think of business, they're like, oh, I got to deal with taxes and like all these other problems and all that stuff. Oh, how am I going to do this, do that? And like one of the things I've noticed is like there's a lot of people that they want to do the thing, but they do something called paralysis by overanalysis, and then they just their negative thinking
Yes.
backs them out of it. So my question to you would be like, how would somebody like what advice would you give somebody that has a tendency to analyze everything and then get into a negative spin and then back out?
Well, the first thing is that you cannot get stuck in overanalysis because overanalyzing will cause you to stay where you are, never taking any steps. It will never be the right time. All the things are not going to be in alignment. The stars are not going to shine brightly. What you have to say to yourself is, okay, what's the first step that I need to take? And
Mhm.
just look at the steps. First thing you need to do is company name. Next step is EIN number. Next step is developing the mission and the goals. Next step is who is your niche that you're going to be serving. But all those things are important. The niche, I mean, all these things are in there together. I'm not putting them in order, but you just look at each one of those steps. And then you get a thinking partner. I am a big proponent of you have to have someone with you in your journey. If you are walking this by yourself, yes, it will be daunting because you have no one alongside of you. I mean, first of all, I'm always going to have my father in my circle, but I'm talking about in terms of people. Who else can you involve in your program
Mhm.
that is like-minded like you? And then and for you'll know who that person is because the spirit will let you know this is the person I need to talk to. And you need to follow that urging. Don't be disobedient. Go, I'm not talking to them. And I have done that. I was laughing to myself because I finally reached out to someone the other day because it had been like a month and God kept saying, you need to reach out to her. You need to reach out to her. And I finally did. And she said, why'd you reach out to me? I said, God told me to reach out to you. And I finally did because the spirit led me that I needed to make a connection with you. And I followed through. So you have to be obedient and follow those urgings because they are telling you the way to go.
See, like a lot of people, they're not in tune with their intuition, right? Because I'm sure you're an intuitive person, but a lot of people, their intellect or their mindset, or the patterns of things, it shuts off that inner calling or that inner voice to like do like a lot of times intuition tends out to be true. Like if you're going if there's something that you're moving towards and there's an inner voice. I think there was like a story. Like I read this book called "The Laws of Human Nature," and or
Mhm.
it's something else. And then Robert Greene talked about Martin Luther King and how he had an inner calling to help liberate, to like basically fight for the civil rights. It was basically God urging him to do so, but then there was his conflict with his mindset and the logic of like how am I going to get such a daunting task done? but then God was, but then the inner voice was like, I will be with you no matter what. And then ultimately he succeeded in his goal. But there was a lot of hurdles because, like, like your intellect or your mind, like it says, oh, how can this happen? Like, look at the practical realities, right? And then there's like the inner voice that comes from a higher power, and it basically tells you that it can be done. That you have to
Correct.
have faith in a higher source. So there's usually a conflict between our mind and like our intellect and our intuition. But that's something I've noticed or during
But we
during
have to train our mind. We have to train our mind because our mind is training us. So instead, we have to reverse it. You have to train your mind because your mind is natural inclination is focused on the negatives. So instead, you have to train your mind to focus on the positives. So for every negative thought you have, you need to replace it with 2 or 3 positive thoughts, or have some words or have some mantras that you recite to yourself to keep you going. Because we all have those. I mean, we all have those periods, but you have to reverse it by saying instead, this is going to be incredible. I am confident about what I'm doing. When that voice says, oh, you don't know what you're doing, you go, I am confident about what I'm doing. You don't have the skills that you're doing. Yes, I have the knowledge to do these things. I have a degree. I received an award. You counteract it. I'm able to write. I can read. So think about the positive things that you can do to counteract those negative voices that tell you that you cannot. And then you have to ask yourself, well, what happens if I don't do this? Instead of saying, what will happen if I do it? What happens if I don't do this? Because then you'll have regrets.
And I would like to add to that, right? Because I think the way our mind, like most minds are, is that it is designed to help you survive. Like that's why it leans towards the negative more often because
Mhm.
it's looking for dangers in the environment or like what could go wrong. But it's meant to like survive. But like ultimately, in order to get to the higher level, we have to get our mindset to get into a thrive and abundance type of mindset.
Correct.
And then that's when the positivity comes in. So you're right, we have to train our mind, but like a lot of people, they don't have the right mentors to like show them how to do that, where like you can, because it's literally a pattern, right? Like going towards negativity is literally a pattern, and we have to ultimately alter that, and that's a significant mindset shift, especially when it comes to business. Because business,
Yeah.
you're going to have a lot of things that are going to go wrong. Like your environment is not going to be the ideal environment, but you have to
Mhm.
push through, and how you look at the world plays a huge role.
Yeah, I mean, you have to find, like, for me, I'm a big proponent of how I start my day. If Because if you start your day in a rush or feeling overwhelmed, then your whole day will be that way. You have to set the controls. If it's just a matter of if you taking 20 minutes at the start of your day to just get into a place of peace, understanding, and calm and joy, and then focusing on the words that you will have go throughout your mind throughout the day. Like today, I thought about confidence. I'm going to have success, abundance, credibility, creativity. Those are the things that I'm thinking about as I go throughout my day and how I can then put those words into action. How can I be creative with something that I'm writing? How can I go about and have abundance and not in terms of financial, but abundance in being able to help others or spreading the joy and peace and love that I have.
No, totally. And Haseena, to add on to this, I wanted to ask you, what was the greatest lesson you've had during your time, like you've learned, like during your time in your career and also coaching clients about like just like business and just like life in general?
My greatest lesson, my greatest lesson is learning how to pause and reflect. I think that that is so important because a lot of times I know I do. I want to take actions immediately. And instead, I've learned how to take a step back, really take some time to reflect on it so that I don't make a rash decision that places me in a predicament that I have to then try to figure out how I can get out of the mess that I made. So I think for me, the best thing that I've learned how to do is really reflect and pause and evaluate and celebrate. I think all those things are important to me because I've have overcome milestones. I think about schooling. Perfect example. I went back to school maybe a year ago, and it's been maybe 25 years since I've been in school. And I was shell shocked because you had to write papers in a certain format. And I was overwhelmed. I thought to myself, oh my God, did I really do this to myself? How am I going to get through this? And so I said, I'm going to get through this. I just said, I can do this. And do you know, I'm having the time of my life in school. I'm enjoying the writing, the discussion boards, the papers, reading the books. I am like a sponge where I just see every class that I take as a new adventure. So you have to turn your perspective around. I think that's what the biggest thing I've had to learn is turn your perspective around from seeing something as being daunting to instead being a challenge and a new opportunity to learn and grow. So it's changing my perspective would be the biggest thing because out of my reflections, that what helps me change my perspective on the situation and how I see it.
Um, I'm actually pausing and reflecting on this because it's true. A lot of times people they go through life and they don't pause and reflect, and they just keep doing things that lead to mistakes and then more mistakes. And if you pause and reflect, then you can have an opportunity to know where you're going wrong and then change accordingly. So
Yeah.
it is very important, but a lot of people don't do that.
No, we keep going like that steam engine, I gotta go, I gotta go. But then what happens is we turn around and we keep making choices that keep adding on to that first bad choice or that other decision that then you have to go back and try to unravel it. But if you just take a second and go, now I know there's another way. And that's the whole point. Because when you stand back, you can then get a whole different perspective and a different view than what you have because your mind is so focused on that one path that you lose sight of that there's another way.
Yeah, like there's a lot of things like in my own life, like I wish I could have paused and reflected, like taking a 30,000 foot perspective and seeing how things would go on like a larger scale and also listen to the inner voice, you know? Because one of the examples is I know my parents wanted me to do engineering, right? But I
Mhm.
was never really passionate about engineering. It's just something I did because it would make my parents proud. But I wish that I had paused and reflected and realized that I need to do something else that is like my inner calling. Like I should have like gone for something that I was passionate about and forgot about what other people thought about it and then taken a degree in that field, like maybe economics or finance and or
Mhm.
psychology, because I was really passionate about all three. And if I had done that back then, like it would actually, I would have had more fulfillment during my time in university or like in the years after that. But no, it was only after I graduated, that's when I was thinking and I was like, okay, you know what? I need to pause and reflect. I need to think, what do I actually want out of my life? Like, what impact do I want to make? And like, in that moment, like I have a meditation practice where it's always about like pulling back inwards, and it's about
Mhm.
understanding like the next moves. Because a lot of people they just jump into the water, they're just like jumping into the water and then learning how to swim. But sometimes it becomes important to like check the perspective on how you're looking at things. And ultimately, a lot of like failures and successes hinge on doing that. So
Yes.
what you're saying is actually very relevant, you know?
Yes. Keep
And
it quick. I mean, it's just like when you get angry. If you have an argument with somebody, you keep going, keep going, keep going. But both of you, somebody just be quiet.
yeah,
Look what could happen if somebody just be quiet. then the other person runs out of steam and you just go, now, do you feel better now? Now, can we talk or do you want to talk later? You know what I'm saying?
No, I mean, I would like to add that like a meditation practice or like kind of like a Zen mindset definitely ha helps with reflection, pausing, and thinking, you know, because
Yes.
that's when when you're calm and you're cool and you're collected, that's when all the intuition, like I've noticed that a lot of like the inner voice like comes like it's allowed to flow through when you're in a calm state of mind versus any other state.
Yes, so true. You know, I was thinking last night I was working on a project and I said, I'm gonna get up from here. And I went, took a shower. And while I was taking a shower, my mind was just open. And I said, yeah, that's what I need to add on there. See how the thoughts just come if you just take that time to step back. And I came back down and said, oh, this really makes sense now, you know. So it's just a matter of taking that time to pause and pull up and reflect. And you will be amazed at the thoughts and ideas that come in your mind.
So Hasina, if you could, let's say you had a time machine and you could go back in time and talk to like the 10-year-old version of yourself, and like you had all this experience that you had right now, like what advice would you give like the younger version of yourself?
So 10 years old. First of all, I have to remember what I was doing at 10 years old because, you know, but I will say this because it is interesting that you asked this question because I was really reflecting on this question just yesterday about my life. And if I could go back in time, what would I change? And I wouldn't change anything. I would tell myself to live, enjoy life. Don't get caught up in the weeds. Don't think that you have to do it all, because I have learned those things. And surround yourself with people that sharpen you and be vulnerable. You know, I've learned that the people that I have in my circle today, I am so grateful for. I am so grateful for them. I'm say this because honestly, I was thinking this same thing yesterday, and it's humbling that you're asking me this. I am so thankful for where I am today and the people that I have in my circle that I don't think there's anything I would change about my life. Only thing I would change is probably maybe I would have been a little bit lighter in weight. You know, maybe lose a couple more pounds. But other than that, I have a wonderful life and I have no regrets. You know, I've made decisions where afterwards I thought I made the biggest mistake. But I just had a conversation with someone the other day and she sent me to a video that I was listening to. And it says we have to be patient and we have to get comfortable with being uncomfortable. And that's what I would tell myself. One thing. Another thing is be patient. But the most important thing that I just said right there is get comfortable with being uncomfortable. That's what I would tell myself.
Hasina, I love that you said that you wouldn't change a thing. And because a lot of people, they wish they could have done things differently and they wish they have, and they sometimes have regrets, right? And the reality of the situation is that sometimes like you go through negative experiences and your life takes a journey the way it is, and it makes you who you are today, right? If you hadn't
Mhm.
gone through those challenges or setbacks along with the good times and the combination of all that, you would not have all the wisdom and life experience that we have right now. So even if like for the audience, like even if you have had setbacks in your life, like know that that shaped you to who you are, and you can learn from all of that, you know?
Totally agree. Everything happens in alignment with what our Father said was going to happen. He says, I knew you before you were in the womb. So everything has already been predestined and determined. What it is for you is to follow that path and to move forward in doing the things that you are supposed to do with your life and learn from your experiences and use them to add to your character and build up that resilience. Because I have an acronym that I live by. It's called Elmore, and it's part of my coaching program. It's your existence, you lead, you're motivated, you have optimism, and and you have resilience, and you put it all together, those 5 things to make the 6, you're empowered. Now you can move forward in your life to become the person that you were created to be.
Yeah, um, definitely. Like that is like we have to go about in that thing. So like you actually have like a formula for that. Like I find like I'm thinking about that right now, and it's making sense, you know?
Mm-hmm. Because
So
yes, yes, totally. Go ahead.
no, no, go ahead.
No, I wasn't gonna say anything. I admire you. You are someone that I see as doing great things, and I want you to keep doing those great things.
No, I appreciate that. Like for some reason, like this conversation, it got me to pause and reflect on a lot of things about like the way my life went in a trajectory, right? Because like when I asked you that question earlier about what would you advise your 10-year-old self? If I had to go back, because I came from a country like in the middle, like I grew up in a country in the Middle East, like in Kuwait, right? And if I had to go back and I had to advise my younger self, I would basically tell that, like God had a plan for you. That's why you're in this country. That you have to see a lot of like you have to see a lot of like injustice and the way people mistreat others,
Mhm.
like in order for you to do something about it later on in life. And then it is all part of like a great story and everything. Because a lot of times God has a story or like a plan for you, but we cannot comprehend it at that time.
No, but first of all, it says lean not on your understanding, lean on his understanding. So our understanding cannot even touch his. So stop trying to think about what you see and instead just lean into him and allow him to take control. And you will go places that you never dreamed that you could go before.
It's interesting you say that, right? Because a lot of times, like it sounds simple enough, but a lot of times, a lot of people have difficulty letting go of their egos. Like they want to control their world, but ultimately, as you're saying, right, when you let go, uh, life goes a lot more smoother because now God is in control.
Mhm. And
So,
a lot of times, and I say that because a lot of times the gifts that we have, we want to use them in places that we're not supposed to use them. And this was an experience that I really lived by because I'm a leader by nature. It's just something in me. I just want to come in and I think I'm supposed to take control and do things. But God said to me one day, he pulled me to the side. He says, that's not yours. Like, that's not your program. You're supposed to sit here and be a participant and help out. So we have to understand too our place, what we're supposed to do.
yeah, and Hasina, on a different note, I wanted to ask you this, right? So, like a lot of things we're talking about is about God, and like ultimately spirituality is about the pursuit of happiness, and it is also an essential core of American identity about that Americans should pursue happiness. So from your perspective, how should somebody go about pursuing happiness in their lives?
But first, the person needs to define what does happiness mean to them? Because happiness can mean so many different things to various people. So you have to find out what happiness means to you. What happiness means to me is being able to have freedom, freedom in terms of not being bound by what people want to say I should do or being bound by what man wants to control that I do. That's to me happiness. But then happiness is also being of service to my community and to others. Happiness is being in good health. And happiness is knowing that I made a difference and I'm making an impact. And so that's what happiness means to me. So I asked the person, they have to define what does happiness mean to them.
So like something that like it makes me want to say that a lot like what you're talking about happiness is ultimately serving others because there's a lot of times like people think of happiness in terms of like, oh, serving themselves, but ultimately that causes unhappiness. But if you are making a difference in other people's lives, as you mentioned, and making an impact, ultimately, like the people that do that end up being happy in the long term. That's what I noticed, like from my own life experience, that there are like two types of people, right? People that are going about like serving themselves versus there are people that are going about serving others. And the pursuit of happiness ultimately comes in, like the higher, like listening to your inner voice, like doing the higher calling that God wants you to do. And also that usually ends up being serving others.
Yes. I mean, so that's something that a person has to take that journey to uncover, because a lot of times it takes you to get into that place. I think about prior to COVID-19, I was a big shopaholic. I mean, I love shoes. I still love shoes today, so I'm not going to tell that tale. But I really love to shop. But it took a minute for me to go, what are you going to do with those things? There's nothing you can do with those things. And so you have to get into a place where you start shedding the things that you don't need in order for you to pursue the things that you really need that brings you fulfillment. That's what we all have to take that journey down, that road to figure those things out.
Yeah, ultimately, fulfillment is something that comes from within and it comes from like helping other people. But a lot of people these days try to find it in like, like shopping and like getting
Yes.
a lot. But ul but ultimately, yeah, like it's kind of like a duality, right? Like there's like the American dream of like, yeah, like if you are success, if you're famous and you have all this material wealth and everything, you're going to be happy. But ultimately, it's serving others and making a difference, having an impact that leads to more fulfillment. And so in my mind, happiness and fulfillment, they're like intricately tied
Mm.
to like making a difference and making an impact, because that I think that's how the higher power designed us. Like we were not going to get happiness by just like serving ourselves.
No, I mean, and wealth is good, but what are you going to do with that wealth? I mean, we have a lot of people out here who are hurting. And I look at how can I take my money and put it to use to help others who are hurting to not hurt anymore.
Yeah.
Yeah, to heal, you know?
So Haseena, I know you wrote this book called Reflections from Within, right? Can you tell me and the audience a little bit more about the premise of that book and what got you to write that book?
Well, actually, I used to, and I still do today, but I've moved up a little bit in technology. I used to do a daily text message to friends. I would send them, I would take a scripture and there was just a meaning behind it, and I would text maybe 2 or 3 sentences out. And so I did this for about maybe a year, 2 years, I don't know how long. And one girlfriend said to me one day, where do you get those messages from? And I said, what do you mean, where do I get them from? She says, yeah, who writes them? And I said, I do. And she said, you write those? And I said, yes. And she said, girl, you should publish your own book then. And I thought, and I've always loved writing, just to so you know. So as you walk, we talked about before, how do you find your purpose? I've always been a writer since I was a kid. I love to read and I love to write. And so I took that prodding that she gave me to heart and I wrote Reflections from Within because I wanted to give individuals a word that would spark them to reflect and take that time to pause and then think about what it is that they need to be doing for that day and developing goals for their life and then taking and developing a plan to move forward. So that's what it's all about. All of my books, Reflections from Within, and the ones that follow deal with how can I help you take time to reflect, listen to those messages so that you can soar to higher levels in your life. And it's ironic that my books went into that order too. you know?
No, I mean, yeah, it's interesting how you started writing the book because it's basically the headline itself is so like fascinating, like reflections from within. It's kind of like what's a book that comes into mind? Yeah, it's like a Marcus Aurelius wrote the book. Like I forgot the name of the book, but it was something like it was kind of like Reflections or something like that, where he talks about like the like deep what he found out during his entire life, and
Mhm.
it's a very intriguing headline altogether.
Yes, because if you, like we said before, if you just take that time to reflect, you'd be amazed at the ideas and the awareness that is a result of just that time away that will help you move forward in identifying the next actions and steps that you should take.
So Hasina, like I know you have the foundation, the nonprofit for like Ava's Pathway. Can you tell me in the audience a little bit more about that and what it is about?
So it goes back again to me pursuing my second master's in human services counseling, and then that woman that I had the fortune to meet in the prison, and God had me put it all together now. He's saying, okay, we have Ava's Pathways, and Ava is the Phoenix Rising. So think about the Phoenix Rising, that's what Ava is. And then the Pathways is you get to decide the direction that you need to go in your life. But the direction that you take will be based on the foundation of making good choices, based on your beliefs, solid beliefs in yourself, and having an identity that allows you to move forward and going in the path that is for you, that has been predestined for you. And so that was what Ava's Pathways is all about. So providing life coaching, where I'm a thinking partner to women who are going through life challenges and adversities in life to help them undergo transformative thinking, but also creating restorative circles where we come together, women, where we can be accountable and have someone and be vulnerable and not take those masks off so that we can be our true selves, so that we can then identify who we are and how we can go forward in our life. And that's what Ava's Pathways is all about.
Hasina, what you're doing is amazing, and I definitely hope that others will be inspired by that, you know, because what you're doing is helping a lot of people. And yeah, I personally appreciate you for that.
You know, and it's funny, I still do a weekly blog. I mean, so, but I'm not antiquated anymore, you know, because I used to be texting on my phone. So now I actually have a weekly nugget that I text out to people, and they can go to my website and get that. But it's just the fact that I am a big proponent of how I can give you a word that will spark you and ignite you to move forward in the direction that you need to be going in your life.
That is amazing, Hasina. And Hasina, how can our audience connect with you and get to know more about you and your work and what you're doing?
Well, you can visit my website at hsjackson.com. Again, it's hsjackson.com. Or you can email me at hsjacksonbook@gmail.com, hsjacksonbook, book singular at gmail.com. But the biggest way is hsjackson.com, because you can sign up to be on my mailing list, because I do a bi-weekly newsletter and I do a weekly nugget that's text to your phone that just gives you a word. And then the newsletter is just a message that helps you to keep going forward in your life. They're all just messages to help you keep going forward. Like I said before, that is one of my purposes is to write so that I can help inspire and motivate individuals, while also with the coaching, being your thinking partner to help you uncover where it is that you need to be going and believing in who you are and what you can do.
Hasina, that is amazing. And I want to let you know that I'm really grateful that you took the time to come on the show and like share your wisdom with me and the audience. And I would definitely want you to be on the show at a later time.
Well, I thank you so much for having me today.
Yeah, thank you, Hasina. And I would want to conclude this episode by letting my fellow extraordinary Americans know that, hey, look, there's an extraordinary within each and every one of us. It's our duty to awaken it and unleash it. Until next time, bye for now.